John, when did you first meet Neil Armstrong? And tell me what you recall.
Well, my first meeting with Neil Armstrong was at the Wapakoneta Museum after I had painted the special painting to celebrate his landing on the moon that was commissioned by Governor Rhodes. And it was a momentous moment for me, and especially since he loved the painting. Well, I knew that I was going to meet him at Wapakoneta, and anticipation ran just feverishly through my veins because I really wanted to meet this man. I've always been a big flag waver, and here I'm meeting a man like meeting Christopher Columbus. It was that important to me to do it. I didn't think about the particular date. The whole thing was an encompassing picture in my mind. Here I was, going to shake hands with the first man on the moon. Shaking up with someone's hand is to me a connection that is something that's hard to describe when you meet a man like Neil Armstrong. I know when I first shook hands with the President of the United States, I didn't even want to wash my hands. And I felt the same with Neil. My hunting days with Neil were very memorable to me. And I felt like this was new because the first time I hunted with him, I had not hunted before, of course. But and the hunt was a very unusual one. We were hunting wild boar, and this was down in southern Georgia. And Neil was very excited about it, and our guide furnished us camouflaged outfits and told us what we were to do. And one of the most interesting things was they said, now, look for the hogs that don't have a curled tail. What they had done, they had captured young hogs and fed them on corn, and to tell the difference between those and the ones out in the woods was different because they cut the tail off of the ones that were fat. And they told Neil and I, just watch and shoot only the ones with no tail. And so here we are crouched in our blinds. And interestingly enough, our guide wasn't camouflaged, just the two of us, as if that made a difference. And all of a sudden he said, here they come, and they came thundering by us through the woods, about 50 of them, creating dust. And I'm looking like crazy from one side to the other, trying to find one without a tail, and I never saw it. And all of a sudden I saw Neil pick up his gun and fire. And by gosh, he shot one with no tail. And I thought, man, this guy is a super hunter. Not only is he a very interesting person, he is a wonderful outdoor person, not because he was able to shoot it, because he enjoyed the whole effort that we were involved in. And I must say, the guide looked at Neil, he kept looking at him, and he didn't really wonder who he was. And he looked over him and he looked him in the eye, and he said, are you the guy that went up? That's just the way he put it. And Neil said, I guess you can say that. Really clever retort, you know. But we had a good time. He was an outstanding pilot, and he was a tremendous hero in the realm in itself, because he was, his plane was hit by enemy fire, and he had to eventually, in trying to circumvent this particular action, he hit a wire, a guy wire on something, and it dislodged part of the wing of the plane. He had to bail out over China, and I had no idea of that. Well, we had a dinner party at his house, and it was a wonderful occasion being there. And one of the things I recall definitely is sitting in the living room and having Neil bring me a scotch on the rocks and looking around and seeing all the memorabilia that he had on the shelves around that wonderful house that he lives in, and then talking on a one-to-one with his wonderful wife. It was just great to be on that inner circle for a moment in time. Well, this is a very historic gun. It's a Parker. This is a 16, and it was named a Sweet 16 because it was so easy to use and lightweight, and considered one of the finest firearms ever made. It so happened Neil had one when we were hunting ducks together down in Arkansas. And it was kind of another neat comparison of our friendship. We both shot the same firearm. Mine was about a 1934, and I had a 20, as you see, a 24-inch barrel. It's a small gun. He had a 30-inch barrel. In other words, when we were hunting ducks, he could reach twice as far out as I could. And he got a lot of ducks, too. Evidently, there were a lot of very talented people when he was chosen as an astronaut. But I think that in judging from what Neil proposed and rating himself among others, he felt very strongly that he was just picked out of a bunch of wonderful people. And he couldn't say enough about his fellow astronauts and his fellow countrymen for that matter. So I feel that he just felt that he was in the right place at the right time and had the talents to do what he did. And he didn't rate himself among others. He just knew that he equipped himself to do just about anything, in any position that he wanted to undertake. And certainly his love of being an astronaut exemplified what he put into life. Energy and definitely hard work, and that's the kind of guy he was.
Did you ever ask him about the moon landing?
I never did, because I revered his privacy so much, and I know that everybody else would ask him if they were in my place, most people. But it was enough for me just to know him and know that he did it. And if he mentioned to me and said, John, did you ever think about asking me about how I felt when I landed on the moon? Then I would feel like I was qualified to talk about it. But I respected the man and his privacy, and I did that to the very end.
When you look at the moon now, what are you thinking?
As I look at it now, this was characteristic for me because I always had thought of the moon and thought of Neil. But after he passed, his wife said to me, says, the next time you see a full moon, wink at it for Neil. And I do it every time now since he passed. But I think that when I painted the picture for the state of Ohio to celebrate his landing on the moon, I never looked at it the same way that after I painted the picture, because I felt, knowing the man and knowing what he had done, to look up there, and not only as everybody says, gee, a man landed on that, and I can say, gee, my friend Neil Armstrong landed there.